did that at the last event. So Professor Greg, maybe next time we'll invite you to join in.
Okay, fantastic.
All done, Ken. It's being live streamed and you can start now.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you for joining, everyone. So it's 10:15, and I hope you are all staying well and safe. Welcome, and my name is Ken Peng. I'm your MC today. On behalf of the Communities Council on Ethnic Issues and Mental Health Foundation Australia, I would like to welcome and thank each and every one of you for attending today's session. Just some housekeeping before we start. This webinar is being recorded and will be live streamed onto YouTube and Facebook pages, and due to the large number of audience in this webinar, there is no audio or video for attendees. We have time allocated for Q&A. If you have any questions, please type them through the Q&A panel, and our panelists will be answering to your questions. This mental health workshop, speaking on anxiety, depression, and PTSD through the lens of COVID, is funded by the Victorian Government through the Priority Response to Multicultural Communities during Coronavirus program. On behalf of the Communities Council on Ethnic Issues, I gratefully acknowledge the Victorian Government's funding from the PRMC Phase 2 program and the continuous support from the Victorian Multicultural Commission, the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, which allowed this event to take place today. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the team of Mental Health Foundation Australia for their powerful support and selfless collaboration in putting this event together. In the second half of today's workshop, we are honored to invite the Department of Health to give a presentation on the COVID-19 vaccination program and COVID-safe behavior, followed by a Q&A. The extended COVID lockdowns have significantly changed our way of life. The disruptions to our social life and daily routines also have a negative impact on our mental health, especially challenging for community members who are prone to mood disorders or have experienced trauma. Today's expert panel will discuss on anxiety, depression, and PTSD through the lens of COVID. I hope you will find courage, clarity, strength, and strategies in coping with your mental health challenges through this difficult time. If you need help, the Mental Health Foundation Australia runs a multicultural mind hotline, and you're encouraged to ring the helpline to seek help on 1300 643 287 from Monday to Friday between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. For crisis and emergency, always call 000. For suicide helpline, the number is Lifeline on 13114. Without any further ado, I would like to begin today by acknowledging the following VIPs. Mr. Sui Ting Se, President of Communities Council on Ethnic Issues. Ms. Vivian Nguyen, Chairperson of Victorian Multicultural Commission. Mr. Brayte, Deputy Chairperson of Victorian Multicultural Commission. Mr. Fasan Srinivasan, Chairperson of Mental Health Foundation Australia. Mr. Has Mustafa, Secretary of Mental Health Foundation Australia. Professor Greg Murray, Director, Centre for Mental Health, Swinburne University. Dr. Alana Roy, Psychologist, Mental Health Social Worker and Psychedelic Therapist. Dr. James Karantonis, President and Support Group Facilitator, Bipolar Life. Ms. Harlin Gandhok, Youth Counselor. Dr. Mohamed Mohideen, OAM, Head of Priority Communities Engagement, Department of Health. Mr. Pasu Sharma Luther, Senior Stakeholder Engagement Advisor, Department of Health. And Mr. Mohit Gupta, Manager, Migrant English and General Education, Swinburne University. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Brayte, Deputy Chairperson from the VMC. Brayte is a spirited advocate for Multicultural Australia. He works to develop the capacity of multicultural communities with a focus on leadership development, education and employment outcomes. His involvement extends from working with individual communities to advocacy at the highest levels. His work informs the direction and policy of service providers, business and all levels of government. Bray has held many leadership roles within Victoria's multicultural sector and has been widely recognized for his advocacy, community service and professional achievements. This recognition includes the Victorian Multicultural Commission's Emerging Leadership in Multiculturalism Award. BRAE has a strong commitment to promoting harmony by engaging and bringing communities together to build a vibrant society. His practical, hands-on approach is well recognized within the multicultural communities. He currently chairs the Victorian Multicultural Commission's Gippsland Regional Advisory Committee and is a multicultural ambassador for Mental Health Foundation Australia and vice president for the Communities Council on Ethnic Issues. Please welcome Mr. Brete.
Thank you, Ken, for that kind introduction. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians upon the land of joining this forum, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respect to the elders past and present. I also want to acknowledge any Aboriginal people who are here, who are joining us for today's session. I want to briefly take this moment to thank the Communities Council on Ethnic Issues and the Mental Health Foundation of Australia, two organizations that are very close to my heart, for coming together and working in partnership to empower our communities. I also want to thank the Victorian government for providing the funding through the Priority Response to Multicultural Communities 2.0 grant. These fundings are critical and goes a long way for communities and organizations to form partnership and work together to address some of the issues arising due to the impact of this pandemic. Before I pass on the mic, I also want to acknowledge and thank the team, the volunteers who are working behind the scene in bringing this forum together. Thank you very much for your dedication and effort that you have put in here. I also want to thank everyone for joining in on this forum. Mental health is a topic that has been raised multiple of times during the community consultations, and I hope that you find this forum useful. But also I hope that this will be many of those meetings that we have around mental health so that we can empower our communities. With that note, I will now invite Mr. Shui Ting, the President of the Communities Council on Ethnic Issues, to make a forward speech. Over to you, Shui Ting.
Thank you, Wei. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shui Ting Che. I'm the president of the Communities Council on Ethnic Issues, Eastern Region Incorporated, referred to as CCOEI in abbreviated form. I also would like to acknowledge that we are on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. It is my honor to announce that we have received funding from the Victorian government through the Priority Response to Multicultural Communities during Coronavirus Phase 2 program to address some of the key challenges our communities are facing during COVID. It is my great privilege to welcome you all to this session. I want to thank our partners for this event, Mental Health Foundation Australia and Swinburne University, for working with CCOEI to empower our communities when they need it the most. I am mindful that our communities are facing immense difficulties as a result of this pandemic. Many aspects of lives within our communities have been severely impacted, such as employment, business studies, health and well-being, and social life. We have received feedbacks from the communities that mental health is a growing concern under periods of extended lockdowns. So CCOEI takes this opportunity to partner with Mental Health Foundation Australia and Swinburne University to address these mental health issues and initiate discussions so that our communities know where there is help and where they can access help. I'm also very proud that we are partnering with the Department of Health so that we can address some of the underlying issues about vaccination, why there is hesitancy or mixed conception about vaccination. Today's session provides an opportunity for our audience to ask any questions that you have on topics of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, as well as the vaccination program. I hope this session will help you better understand and cope with your own mental health and take away some self-care strategies to get by these challenging times in COVID, as well as helping you make informed decisions going forward to have a better understanding of the benefits of vaccination. With that note, I would like to take this opportunity to announce that CCOEI, through its Migrant Settlement Committee, in partnership with Migrant Information Centre, Services Australia and Swinburne University, will be hosting an employment forum, which will take place in November 2021. Details will be provided. Please follow our social medias, CCOEI Victoria's Facebook and LinkedIn page, Twitter, or visit our website for more information. Once again, I would like to congratulate the team from CCOEI and Mental Health Foundation Australia for this much needed forum. I would also like to thank Ms. Vivian Nguyen from the Victorian Multicultural Commission for the ongoing support of our initiatives, and we are grateful for the support from the Victorian Multicultural Commission. On behalf of CCOEI, I acknowledge the commitment and dedication of our external working group consisting of numerous local councils, including Manningham, Whitehorse, Boroondara, Monash, Knox, Maroondah councils, Migrant Information Centre, Services Australia, and many community leaders who are offering enormous support to CCOEI as a working group for our PRMC project. Thank you all and hope you will find this workshop useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sui Ting, for your meaningful speech. Now I would like
Thank you, Ken.
introduce Mr. Has Mustafa from Mental Health Foundation Australia. Has is a very proud Australian with a Turkish Cypriot heritage with humble beginnings, who migrated to Australia with his family 52 years ago at the age of 10, at a time where you were expected to assimilate into the Australian way of life and not to be different. Has was the longest serving senior executive at Commonwealth Bank with 46 years of experience, of which 18 years he was in the general manager role. Has was over a quarter of a century now has been very active in promoting cultural diversity both in the community and his workplace. And Has's work was also acknowledged on the 2014 Queen's Birthdays Honours List and was awarded the Order of Australia Medal for his services to multiculturalism and business. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Has Mustafa, Secretary of Mental Health Foundation Australia.
Thank you, Ken, for that very generous introduction. Good morning, everyone, and what a great pleasure it is to be amongst you today on a very wet Melbourne morning. And I'm absolutely thrilled that there's nearly 300 participants to today's Zoom meeting. But on behalf of the Mental Health Foundation Australia, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's important session on depression, anxiety, and PTSD through the lens of COVID. Before we start, can I also begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we are meeting on today, wherever you may all be on. And today, I am on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Can I also acknowledge all the VIPs, the guest speakers, and participants attending today's event. As a proud board member on Mental Health Foundation Australia board, the oldest established Mental Health Foundation Australia, which was established way back in 1930. I am delighted to be working with the Communities Council on Ethic Issues to bring to you the exceptional speakers that we have invited today, especially Professor Greg Murray, who is our keynote speaker today. Thank you, Professor, for accepting an invitation for you to share your valuable knowledge with us today. Mental Health Foundation Australia is firmly committed to improving the mental health and well-being of the community in terms of educating the community through sessions like these, supporting them through our Multicultural Mind hotline, support groups, and advocating and spreading awareness about mental health and well-being. The National Mental Health Month is one such initiative that I'm extremely proud about because of the reach it has in the community and the awareness and impact it creates. From the 1st of October to 31st of October, each day during October, there is an event speaking to various communities about mental health and raising awareness of mental illness in our community. I also encourage you all to join our Walk for Mental Health event, which is organised all across Australia in all capital cities at the same time simultaneously. This year, we have created the Mental Health Foundation Australia app, where you can download and join us from wherever you are to show your support towards communities' mental well-being and to stand with us in solidarity while we advocate for better mental health services. With the lives of our young people front of mind, this year, the Mental Health Foundation Australia is launching the Mental Health Appeal on the 10th of October, also being World Mental Health Day. Through this initiative, we raise funds Australia-wide for the development of an evidence-based training program specific to positive and strength-based youth mental health and suicide prevention, primarily aimed at promoting life and safety in young people. Your valuable dollars and cents will help us immensely in bringing our programs to life that will benefit many young Australians. For more information on Mental Health Appeal, please visit our website, www.mentalhealthappeal.com.au, for information on how you can support this valuable cause. I certainly look forward to your participation in the National Mental Health Month to help us spread awareness about mental well-being in our community. In closing, thank you everyone for joining us today, and I look forward to all the presentations and valuable panel discussions on a topic that I know is very close to all our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huss, and also all the meaningful work that Mental Health Foundation is doing. Now I have the honor to introduce Professor Greg Murray, our keynote presenter today on the topic of depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Professor Greg Murray is a clinical academic conducting mixed methods research into bipolar disorders, circadian rhythms, personality, and affect. He's ranked in the top 1% of researchers worldwide in each of these fields. After a first career in music, he took out his PhD from University of Melbourne in 2001 and has been a full professor at Swinburne since 2011. Professor Murray's work has had significant community impact. He wrote the Australian Psychological Society Guidelines for Treating Bipolar Disorder and is a senior author on the influential Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists Mood Disorder Guidelines. Professor Murray has played numerous leadership roles, including Head of Psychology at Swinburne and Chair of Hawthorn Headspace. Current positions include Director of Swinburne's Centre for Mental Health, Chair of Origin Research Review Committee, Patron of Bipolar Life, and Oceania representative on the board of International Society for Bipolar Disorders. Please join me on giving a warm welcome to Professor Greg Murray.
Thanks very much, Ken. It's a great pleasure and honour to be working with the Mental Health Foundation again. This is really one of the groups that makes a real difference in the community. And obviously that's what all our work is all about. Like everyone else, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. I'm on beautiful Bunurong country down in Elwood. And I noticed that at this time of year, the Indigenous people in Melbourne have different views on the seasons of the year than we currently do with our 4 seasons. And apparently we've just entered orchid season, which is when the orchids bloom and the silver wattle blooms. And happily koalas start to mate. So this is a very good time of year if you're a koala. My aim today is really to focus on, am I sharing my screen? There we go. Here we go. My aim today is to focus on some self-management strategies. So I'm not going to go into the data about COVID and lockdowns and its impact on mental health. I'm going direct to, I think, hopefully some suggestions that are actually useful for those of us on the call who are finding this present time a little bit challenging. So I'm going to introduce you to some self-management tips and strategies. And the Preeti, I think, has disseminated already to the people who are on the Zoom call a handout that sort of expands a bit more on what I'm going to say today in this very brief talk. And the first thing to sort of unpack a bit as we think about how we're all responding to COVID and the challenges at the moment is to just put a bit of nuance into the definition of mental health. And I think one very useful thing to do is distinguish between what you might call the dimension of mental illness and the dimension of positive mental health. And it's useful to think about these as two different facets of what we mean by mental health. And I noticed that Hus Mustafa a second ago was talking about the funding that has been received as part of suicide prevention work. And the work that the foundation is going to do in that space is very much focused on a positive strengths-based approach. And that's what I mean by this positive mental health dimension. So when we distinguish between these two sort of facets of mental health, we end up with this sort of grid where you can think about yourself, and I encourage you to do this now, to think about yourself in terms of what quadrant you would end up in. Obviously, we want ourselves and our loved ones to be flourishing, where we're experiencing good, strong, positive mental health. That is, we have satisfaction in life. The things that matter to us are kind of working. We have hopes and dreams that we are able to pursue, so positive mental health. But we also have, if we're flourishing, an absence of mental illness challenges, right? At the other end of the spectrum, in that pink quadrant, we have people whose lives are, quite severely impacted by mental illness. And those people have quite different challenges to someone who is just, suboptimal, not quite where they want to be in their positive mental health. And we may have very different suggestions for them. And those other two quadrants, struggling and languishing, I've been talking to a lot of people about this recently. And I think at the moment, facing COVID, many people are in one of those two sort of quadrants. None of us are particularly flourishing because all of us have barriers to the things that matter to us. Quite a few of us continue to have ongoing problems with mental illness that may have preceded COVID and perhaps been exacerbated by COVID. But a lot of us are having what we might call incomplete mental health. Things are not working out for us. We're experiencing more anxiety than normal. We're experiencing perhaps more lowered mood than normal. And we may also just be struggling in that we're frustrated with our inability to pursue things that really matter to us. And I think here a lot about young adults in particular when I think about struggling. It's not so much that they necessarily have a mental illness or warrant a diagnosis. It's more that they are being impeded from what they should be doing at their developmental stage. My daughter, who's 21, told me a story last night. She was watching a TV show that she's fallen in love with. It's an old show called The Secret Life of Us, which is set down here on Bunurong country. And she said there was one episode about a party, and her and her friends decided they couldn't watch it. It was just too painful to watch what young people are meant to be doing, when you're 21, meeting new people, taking some risks, etc. All that is not available to young people at the moment. And that's one quadrant that I think is particularly important not to forget about. So, some strategies and tips. First, and so following on that model where we're distinguishing between mental illness and positive mental health, let's just say a couple of things firstly about positive mental health, the sorts of things that matter to us in terms of really flourishing. And you've probably seen these ideas before. I mean, they're largely common sense, but I think it doesn't go without saying. I think it's worth remembering these things. The importance of connection, which we're all feeling hopefully at the moment as we sit and share our commitment to our own well-being and others' well-being. The fundamental importance of physical health. I must admit I was one of those people who was very excited when the Victorian government said as part of lockdown, one of the reasons to leave home was exercise. This represents, I think, a very, very positive shift in understanding mental health and well-being, that as fundamental as going to see a doctor for an appointment is getting out and working up a sweat in one way or another. The importance of trying to find ways to keep your mind fresh, keep learning, learning new skills, something that you maybe have been putting off for a long time. One of the things we all have at the moment is perhaps some more downtime without commutes, etc. And so the opportunity we all have is actually to do that thing that we've been perhaps overlooking for a while. Oh, sorry, just going back. Two more final points. One of the things that we know really matters to human beings and does make us feel better, helps us flourish, and people who are flourishing often mention this as a behaviour, is something about giving to others. There's something really important for human beings about not having ourselves as the centre of our focus. And of course, there are many, many opportunities for us to simply smile at someone as you're walking down the street, or do a little piece of work for the neighbours. My partner yesterday made some biscuits and took them across to the new family who've just moved in across the street. And I'm sure both the new family and my partner benefited from that activity. And then finally, there's something about that's associated with mental health and well-being that is about where you put your attention moment by moment. And I mentioned before that it's a nice sunny day in Bunurong country, and it is. And I try and remind myself to pay attention to those little phenomena, those little sensory experiences that can just get me out of my head, get me out of the worries and concerns that might otherwise attract my attention. So let's talk in the last 5 minutes or so about some of these worries and concerns and what are the best strategies for dealing with them. 3 approaches to managing stress. And I call these 3 things the power of planning, the power of perspective, and the power of being present. So let's look at the power of planning. That's the map, by the way, that took the American astronauts to the moon for the first time. Hell of a lot of planning was probably required to make that happen. This is a core skill that we get. We see it in problem-solving therapy. We see it in cognitive behavioural therapy. It's the skill of problem-solving. One of the things that I find as a clinical psychologist that is incredibly beneficial for people, I'm often talking to people who have a whole heap of challenges in life. They may have mental health disorders. They may also have social challenges, unemployment, etc. And one of the things that's most useful in the first session or two with people is simply to hop up on the whiteboard and list what the problems are. Actually, as it were, externalize the problems so you can stand back and have a look at them. And after we do that, and for a given person, there might be 5 or 6 problems, of course. And if those problems are just bouncing around inside your head, they feed off each other and very quickly, of course, become overwhelming. But the trick of externalizing them, especially using the written word, in my experience, it's quite different to just talking about these things in dialogue. And you can do this yourself. So I do it as a psychologist, but we can do this as a self-management technique. We write down a list of our current concerns, pick the one that is most concerning for us. The trick here, of course, is you've listed them all. You're not going to forget about the others. And this is something you can't do in your head. Your head will just keep sliding around and one will come up and you say, but what about the other one, blah, blah, blah. But putting a list actually puts a linear structure, which does help us keep our heads above water. And once you've picked a problem, list all the solutions you can think of, including ridiculous ones. It's useful to do this step in consultation with someone you trust, bounce around ideas. What would you do? Would this work? Here's a crazy idea. Then choose one of these suggested solutions you've come up with and work out what it would involve to pursue that solution. What do you need? You might need advice. You might need to sit on a phone calling a government agency for a couple of hours. And believe me, I've done that. And as part of doing that, of course, you may need to think, how am I going to tolerate sitting on the phone for a couple of hours waiting for a government agency to get back to me, right? So you problem solve all the little steps in this. Then you pursue the action, see how it went, and give yourself feedback, again, perhaps in consultation with someone you trust, about how that worked. Did it work completely? Did it partially work? And then finally, reflect on this in terms of thinking, what did you learn about the problem? It might have gone. What did you learn about the solution? You may have learned a new skill in terms, you might have learned that once that person in the government agency picks up the phone, they're actually quite helpful. But you also may have learned something about yourself. You may have learned, gee, I wish I hadn't procrastinated about solving that for a couple of weeks because it did really end up being a bit of a burden to me, for example. The power of perspective. So this is the famous idea that we've known since the ancient Greeks. The woman who serves me my coffee every morning is Greek, and she was talking the other day about some of the insights of the ancient Greeks, which have had a huge influence on psychology in particular. And this is one of the core ideas. How we experience a situation depends a lot on the perspective we take of it. This is the core of cognitive therapy that many of you will have heard of. And 2 or 3 quick ideas about this that really help people. Watch out for the way you think about a problem. Watch out for these 3 things in particular: catastrophizing, black and white thinking, and emotional reasoning. Catastrophizing is when we start to say to ourselves, what if lockdown continues into next year? What if there's a new variant of COVID that doesn't have as good response to the vaccines? Now, the problem with those questions is they're very common for us human beings. We do it a lot. We're genetically predisposed as a species to look out for trouble. But that doesn't mean we have to look out for trouble, because you can tell, can't you, that asking yourself those questions and dwelling on them, especially again inside your own mind, without checking them against anyone else, will just simply cause distress and demoralization. It will not be useful to you. Black and white thinking is similar. We are a bit prone, us human beings, to swing between thinking things are going okay and things are really falling apart. And we, of course, are encouraged by the media at the moment, aren't we, to look at this current situation that the world is in these terms. The media, of course, has a vested interest in making us think we are living in completely unprecedented times. That's the business of the media. And the media has a particular interest in making us all feel like on a day-to-day basis or even an hourly basis, there is a new problem, potentially a disaster that needs our attention. This again is not useful for us to be spending time thinking about. And finally, another cognitive habit that we all have that is particularly problematic is to act as if how we feel about things is in fact an accurate representation of how things are. And I'm thinking, I've been talking to a few people lately about how things are going with COVID in this current lockdown that Victoria's in. And I'm reminded of how differently we thought about COVID when we were out of lockdown. The facts and the meaning and the predictions about the future were very, very different earlier this year when we weren't in lockdown and we were feeling a bit better. We are of course, on average, slightly unhappy and slightly distressed because of the barriers that we're facing at the moment as a community. Some of us, of course, much more so than others. But it is pretty remarkable when you think about how when we felt a bit differently about it, when we were outside lockdown, our perspective on the facts was also different. We were more optimistic. And then just one final thing about this, and it's that particular challenging idea of worry. Worry is something we all do, and it comes sometimes disguised as problem solving. And in fact, it's the evil twin of problem solving. It's where we focus on a problem typically inside our heads. We do this internally. We think about the worst possible outcome, and we systematically forget about the coping resources we would bring even if things don't work out the way we want. And so I'm just going to leave that there for you to think about. These are the symptoms of worry. And if you find yourself ruminating about a worst possible outcome and ignoring the skills and resources you would actually bring to that problem, if in fact things didn't work out the way you wanted, of course they may well work out the way you want, who knows? But even if things didn't work out the way you want, remember the resources you would bring to bear, because all of us have been through difficulties before and all of us have resources. And finally, just the last point, when we're anxious and under stress, we focus on future threats. This is part of that adapted alarm response, the fight or flight response that many of you will have heard of. And the Buddhists tell us this, and Stoic philosophers from Greece and Rome, ancient Greece and Rome, tell us this, that the antidote to stress and worry is to use the senses and the breath to help us bring attention to the present moment and help us unhook from what the Buddhists call the monkey mind, the silly jabbering of thoughts. Now, it takes some effort to learn the skill of, this is mindfulness, many people will know it as, or meditation. It takes some time to learn the skill. But what I tell my clients, and I've learned myself from my own experience, is that skill is worth learning. It's easy to learn. The Smiling Mind free website and app is where I refer people to now, and it works wonderfully. And I'd encourage all of you, if you don't have the skill of meditation or mindfulness, put in some work now to learn it. It will pay you back in spades. And then finally, as already mentioned by Ken, seek help if necessary. I'm talking about the self-management strategies that you can use. But if you're finding that negative emotions and thoughts are in fact getting on top of you, it might be time to seek help, to reach out. It's a huge amount of good quality information on the web. Health Direct is the federal government's introduction and overview of what mental health is and what you can do about it. Your GP is a great starting point if you think you may need some professional assistance. But Beyond Blue actually has really helpful helplines to help you discuss and work through where the best place for you to get help might be. And then, of course, as Ken also mentioned, sometimes we're in crisis. That's a different thing again. And if we're in crisis, then O is your go-to. Thanks very much. I hope that was useful.
Thank you, Professor Greg, for the powerful tips and strategies in taking care of our mental health. And I'm amazed by how everyday wisdom of living in the philosophical perspective of focusing on what we can control can help ease our anxieties and manage stress. Now I would like to introduce Dr. James Karantonis. Dr. James Karantonis is a professional psychologist with a PhD in clinical neuroscience. He works as a counselor for services such as Men's Line Australia and as a postdoctoral researcher and lab manager at the Melbourne Neuropsychiatry Centre. James is also heavily involved with the Australian bipolar disorder community as the president and support group facilitator at Bipolar Life, a not-for-profit charity organization. Welcome, Dr. James.
Thank you very much, Ken. And thank you to everyone who is joining us from wherever you may be. I'm currently residing on Jawajali land up near Horsham. So I will just share my screen now. And hopefully everyone can see that. So I thought what I would do in my very brief presentation today is just talk about anxiety and anxiety from the perspective of a student. So I finished my PhD last year with Swinburne University, so very much experienced what it is like to study during a COVID pandemic. And that's a novel environment for everyone. So I thought today I'll talk a little bit about anxiety and about how as a student you can seek support and help yourself through this really new and difficult time. So what is anxiety? It's a word that we use very commonly nowadays. But, you know, some people can use it for different reasons, but anxiety is the anticipation of future threat. So a long time ago, if you had people sitting by the fire and they saw a lion, you know, they might not, you know, feel much when they saw it, but as soon as they notice that it eats, you know, your fellow companions, there's that anxiety that comes, you know, you'd learn to avoid the lion. And nowadays, it's not so much a lion, but it might be COVID. It might be that anxiety about, you know, if I get sick, or if you're a student, it might be anxiety about my upcoming exam. It might be, I'm worried about what my friends think of me. I'm worried what score I'll get on that test or assessment. So the anxiety of the past is not really too relevant nowadays. And we've got very much in this COVID scenario, a new thing to worry about. So anxiety is very common. 1 in 4 Australians suffer from anxiety. So if you take a classroom full of your friends and peers and you're suffering from anxiety, know that you're not alone, that it's likely that there are at least a handful of other people who are also going through a similar thing. And the way anxiety manifests, it does so across your mind, your body, and your behavior. So things like heart rate increases, your palms get sweaty, your breathing increases. These are things you might not be consciously aware that is happening. You're not thinking, oh yes, my heart rate's increasing, my breathing's getting faster, but it's just things that happen when you are feeling anxious. In the mind, things like rumination, so thinking over and over and over again about something might be a sign that you're anxious. Thinking worst case scenario, and like Professor Murray said before, catastrophizing that the worst is going to happen. And also in your body and in your behavior, you know, avoiding something because you're anxious about it, whether it's avoiding studying for that test or avoiding, I guess in this current context, going on a Zoom call with your friends because you're worried about what they might think. So anxiety can affect us in a lot of different ways. But as I use the example of avoiding the lion, I also like to think of anxiety like a bit like chili sauce. It's fine. It's only when you've got too much of it is it really a problem for you. So some practical tips for anxiety. And as a prior student myself, I found it really helpful seeking support from my support networks. I remember very early on someone said, reach out to people around you. And I really had no idea specifically who they were referring to. And over my studies, I contextualized that in terms of experience. So seek out those who have more experience than you. And this might include your supervisors. If you're doing postgrad study, if you're an undergrad, it might be your unit coordinator, it might be your tutor. And seek out older students, people who've done that class the year before. These are people who are going to know, what it's like to be in your shoes. People who have more of an understanding of what you're going through and what's required of you. So seek out those who share your experience. And a prime example of this would be people doing the course with you. They're in your shoes. They understand what you're going through. They're going through the same thing. So if you are feeling anxious, sometimes, confiding in someone like a course peer, a fellow student, can be really helpful. And seek support from those with different experiences. So this might be your family. So for example, your parents, if they're in a different field, or, they know you on that personal basis, they're going to be able to offer different insights and supports different to people like your supervisors. And the same goes for your friends as well. So for me, particularly, it was a combination of people who got more experience, the same experiences, and different experiences that really gave me a well-rounded support network. And that was something I found particularly useful in dealing with my own anxieties. And that was just, I guess, specific to study. But when it comes to something like COVID, we're all going through it together. And so that would very much fall under that shared experience. So don't hesitate to reach out to people in your support network. I know myself, that's really what got me through a really difficult year. So what can you do today about your anxieties or worries? And my number one tip would be focus on self-care. Before COVID, self-care was a term that maybe wasn't appreciated as much as it is now. We didn't really understand the value of self-care. Self-care is looking after yourself, essentially. And with the basics, sleeping, eating, and exercise, they're really important fundamentals. And as Professor Murray touched on, these are things that you can work on today. So especially sleep. Sleep is one of those that can help break that cycle of anxiety. If you're worried about something, you might stay up all night thinking about it. You wake up the next day more tired. So you're more anxious, that flares up anxiety. So you get less sleep the next night, and so on and so on. So sleep, if you were going to focus on any of those three, I would focus on sleep and getting that right and making sure you're getting enough hours for you. Engage in your own well-being practices. Everyone has different things that work best for them. For myself, I've just started getting into mindfulness. So taking 20 minutes a day to sit down and use an app. I'm using the Headspace app at the moment. And that's really working well for me. But everyone has something that works for them, whether it's reading a book outside, playing a video game, playing a board game with a housemate or family member. Whatever works for you, focus on that as a well-being practice. Prioritize your own well-being. In today's current climate, sometimes saying, look, I'd love to catch up over Zoom, but I really just need some me time. That can go a long way to looking after your own mental health. Back in the day prior to COVID, it was saying, look, I'm not going to go out tonight. I'd love to, but I'm just going to stay home and take care of myself, get an early night, that sort of thing. So make sure you're always putting yourself and your well-being first. And be kind to yourself. It's not something that we do naturally, but just be compassionate. Understand that, yes, we're all going through something new, and it is tough, but focus on yourself and that sort of self-compassion, and that goes along as well. And finally, reach out for professional support when need be. So things like, for a student, university counsellors, career advisors, they would probably be that first step, you know, in that sort of university context. Speak to your doctor about getting a mental health care plan. So they will help write up a referral, and that will get you, I think it's about 20 sessions or so subsidised by the government to get you on your way seeing a psychologist or a counsellor. Through your work, if you're working an employee assistance program, so that's typically 3 sessions, brief intervention with a counsellor. They'll speak to you about whatever's going on for you at the moment. So that's a nice free resource. And psychologists and crisis support lines. So there's a handful listed there that I would highly recommend if you are in need of support. So that was a very brief overview of anxiety, sort of in the student and COVID context. If you have any questions, please reach out, and thank you to the Mental Health Foundation and everyone involved today for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. James, for your power tips on anxiety. Now I'm pleased to introduce our panel moderator for today, Dr. Alana Roy. Dr. Alana Roy is a registered psychologist, mental health social worker, and psychedelic therapist. Inspired by wisdoms, traditions, and modern clinical practice, she's a mother, a wife, traveler, lover of music and animals. Over the last 13 years, Dr. Roy has worked and remained active in a range of settings including sexual assault, domestic violence, suicide prevention, schools, disability, mental health services, and the deaf and deafblind community. She works with children, youth, and adults. In more recent years, Dr. Roy has developed a personal and professional passion for plant medicines and psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy through mind medicine. Please welcome Dr. Alana. Over to you.
Thank you, Ken. And before we move on to introducing Harlin and doing the Q&A, just really want to take a moment to, of course, acknowledge the traditional owners, which we're all on today. It's incredible lands in Australia. But in the space that I work in, the field of psychedelic science, just want to take a moment to acknowledge the shift that's occurring with the renaissance in the field of psychedelic science, and just really hoping that we continue to respect and work closely with Indigenous communities all around the world who have used these medicines for thousands of years. And as we bring these medicines through the research paradigm to Australia, it is my hope, it is my prayer that we do so with, integrity, with safety, really strong leadership, and really holding particularly the youth as these medicines enter the mainstream. Very powerful, but we hold them with respect and reverence. Just thank you. And just also wanted to acknowledge James and all that incredible work at Men's Line and Suicide Line. I spent many years, many late nights on those lines that were really pivotal in my development and my ability to work with the dark night of the soul and people going through, pretty lonely and extreme forms of isolation. So incredible work at Beyond Blue and Suicide Line, Men's Line. And also acknowledging that my friends at the Mental Health Foundation, who I did my placement with a very long time ago, but I've stayed connected to them, and just the partnership and work that they do is incredible. Again, just taking a moment to acknowledge the impact that COVID has had on all of us. And through crisis and through shifts and change, there is the capacity to dig deep into, our values. When all our things are stripped away, our comforts, consumerism, ability to see people, shopping, distractions, activities, when all of that is stripped away, what is left? And I invite you over the course of the coming weeks just to really reflect on your deeper values, your connection, whether that's to land, that's to spirit, religion, philosophy, science, the bigger truths in this great mystery that we're all a part of. And I invite you to, as what Greg mentioned, explore contemplative practices, mindfulness, meditation, stillness, anything that's going to bring you closer to home as the world does what it does and cycles through these stages of transformation. And just an extra acknowledgement to anyone that's experienced sexual trauma, family violence. COVID has been particularly triggering for these people when you've had, your body compromised, your power, your safety, and then these extra levels of your freedom being compromised. It can be very, very triggering. And also if your home is not safe, I encourage you to please reach out and get support. And there's a whole community here to talk to. Before we move on to the Q&A, I'd just like to introduce Harlin. Harlin is a qualified counsellor who's been working with youth for over 5 years in a range of settings. She has experience with refugee groups, asylum seeker, trauma backgrounds, and those with family MPA issues. She has a range of practice experience working with high-risk youth and crisis callers, and worked extensively with women and children experiencing family violence in first responder organisations. Harlin's current role is working with young people 12 to 18 years in educational settings, and also students newly arrived to Australia with complex needs. So thank you for joining us here today, Harlin.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll open up to the panel for the Q&A. So please, I invite anyone to write a Q&A in the chat box, and we can go through these together. All right, so I'll just read out the first question. I was hoping the panel could provide some ideas for best practice when working with students and families who have disengaged from education during the lockdown period. And I might start with Harlin, given your background in youth and education settings, and Greg, you might also want to comment.
Sure. So my background is working with young people, as Dr. Alana mentioned, young people aged 12 to 18 in an education setting. And during our extensive lockdowns and interrupted last couple or 18 months, I've seen a lot of young people really disengage from education and school and find it really hard to connect online and to engage with remote learning. As I think it was Dr. James mentioned, start of remote learning, it was a bit of a novelty. It was a new experience, and it was something a bit fun for a lot of the teenagers because they could just roll over in bed and log on, and that was the end of that. And now a lot of young people are really struggling with their mental health, and that's obviously not supporting them being able to log on and engage in remote learning. Some of the things that we found most helpful when working with young people like this is really working with their family around creating a really healthy routine at home. And, it's the small practice things that Dr. James and Professor Greg have mentioned, really having a healthy routine, waking up at a consistent time, making sure that young people are having something to eat, going for a walk, getting out there, getting some sunlight, and actually getting some time away from the screen. A lot of young people are feeling very overwhelmed, and there's a lot of screen fatigue, and we know they're not very good sleepers anyway. And so that extended period of screen time is really impacting their rhythm and how they can focus. We've also really encouraged families to work with young people, with their children or with their students, and just have them perhaps create small lists that they can tick things off during the day, just having small tasks that they can achieve and feel like they've actually gotten through something for the day, not taking it too hard on themselves to attend every call and do everything and go above and beyond. Just really, I think, going through and creating a small timetable, a small list of things that they need to get done. And even if that's things like making sure they've had their 3 meals a day, they've stayed hydrated, they've gone for a walk, spent some time away from the screen and perhaps done something with an adult or sibling or someone else in the home. So just, I think really creating a sense of routine has been most helpful, and where they're able to, encouraging to engage online. But I think just helping them to create some kind of norm in their day has been most helpful.
Thank you, Harlin. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Harlan. I completely agree with all those things you're saying. The other thing that I'm thinking is right now at Swinburne University, we have concerns about our students and their engagement, or, you know, how they're coping with things at the moment. And one of the things that we would add to that sort of list of coping and wellbeing suggestions that you made and James also brought up is humans aren't just what's happening to them, they are also where they think they're going. And so one of the things that we're doing actually today when I come off this call, we've got some recent graduates of Swinburne who, you know, are making their way through their careers, and interesting things are happening and unpredictable things are happening in their careers. And we've got a huge amount of interest from the current students just to hear those stories, because I think that's one of the most difficult things at the moment. It's hard to look forward. It's, you know, it's hard to have things to look forward to, but it's also hard for us to map out an image of, you know, what's my life going to be like? You know, those things that young people, of course, are naturally thinking about. So I just think that another strategy is paying attention to the sorts of narratives we're inviting young people into about where to next. And that's why I think it is important for those of us who are more senior members of the community to really maintain an optimistic perspective that, you know, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with COVID, but on balance throughout history, things work out. And the next 5 years of your life may not be exactly the way you thought they were going to be, but that doesn't mean they're going to be terrible. And in fact, there may be gold nuggets in this uncertain situation that you would never have stumbled across if it weren't for these barriers that have been put up for you. So yeah, on top of those sort of very sensible and important coping strategies for teenagers and young adults, I do think something about productive narratives, stories about where you could possibly go are really important.
Thanks, Greg. And I'll just briefly add to that. It can be really, really powerful to connect, or all of us, but young people to, you know, whether it's leaders, whether it's people in sport, through pop culture, people who've displayed grit and resilience, and people they can really connect to, and potentially, you know, read their books, listen to their podcasts, and really see that the story of humanity and how grit and resilience has gotten us through, you know, so much before and will again. We'll move on to the next question. I think, James, you might be able to help with this one. My 17-year-old daughter suffers from extreme social anxiety. She's currently trying to finish year 12 and is struggling so much. She's currently seeing a psychiatrist and psychologist, but how do we help them if they won't help themselves?
And that's a really tricky one for parents. You know, there's that drive to help, to fix, to look after their child. But I think, and Greg, you could probably support me in your perspective on this, but I think as a parent, we're all discovering this new time together, and we don't have all the answers on how to fix things, but just being there as a support to listen so that your child feels heard. You know, it's not a massive or expensive, you know, solution to just make sure that you're there to listen to your child. It's something that we can all do today, but it is something that, particularly through counselling, I've learned that it is a really powerful tool. And so I think for someone, you know, with social anxiety, going through year 12 is hard enough as it is, you know, with all things, you know, smooth sailing, and social anxiety is really tricky. So I think I'm glad to hear that they're getting support, but as a parent, maybe just being there for your child, being an open ear, and not putting, I guess, that pressure on for them to discuss it. Tell me what's going on, but saying, rather, I'm here for you if you'd like to talk. And that would be a great start, I think, in conjunction with those other supports.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the job of a parent, is to worry, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first parenting book I read when my son was born, the first sentence was, you're a good parent if you worry. But it's a bind, right? You're absolutely right, James. There are some things that it is very hard to help with, especially as our kids get older, adolescents, young adults. We can't make them do things. We can't pull them in certain directions. I completely agree with you, James, that often the best we can do is just be present with them. And something about that can be reassuring. But yes, as a parent, I feel for the person who asked that question. That's the gig.
Yeah,
it's just difficult, and so I wonder if the person who raised that question is also making sure that they're getting the help they need, which is of course good modelling for their child.
And that sort of very much brings to mind that the airplane analogy, when the oxygen masks come down. You always put on yours first so that you can be there to support someone else. And as a parent, that's something that embodies self-care. Look after yourself so that you can be there to support your child. Look after your own well-being to strengthen that home environment.
Thank you.
I might just add in there.
Just briefly add to that.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say it might be helpful for the person who asked this question to join perhaps a support group or something for parents with young people going through similar situations. A lot of parents that I've worked with have found that to be quite helpful to, I guess, almost brainstorm what works and what doesn't work in that time.
Great, thank you. And I was just going to add to Michelle, I think particularly with young women and social anxiety, a big core of that is lack of love for self and self-esteem. And, just if you can surround her with any positive role models, any female role models who have good self-esteem, who are okay to be vulnerable and not perfect and really strong in that. And I think, getting your relationship right with yourself is the biggest tool with the world. And also, Michelle, if you can help her explore body-based practices for her nervous system, anything like meditation, swimming, full body scans, anything that's going to help regulate her capacity to settle herself. If you can work on her nervous system and her relationship with herself, it'd be powerful. We'll go on to another question. Do we have any advice for elderly people in lockdown from different cultural backgrounds? I guess for living a more healthy and active life for elderly people in lockdowns. Who would like to answer that one?
I'm happy to start us off.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I think for the elderly, and this may be a bit of a generalization, but I believe isolation is not a new thing for the elderly. And there's been a lot of they look after themselves if they're independent. But I think now with COVID and all that, we're all on the same page. We have maybe a better understanding of what isolation is like and what maybe living by yourself is like as well. And so those core foundations, sleeping, eating, exercises, I think something that is relevant to everyone. And if we're all on the same page and sort of valuing that, that could be a benefit to the elderly. So again, exercising when you can, as much as appropriate, maintaining your eating and your sleeping. They're all really important things that I think can be generalized and used by everyone, not just the elderly.
Thanks, James. Okay, so Bill's got a really, really, nuanced question, but I think it's really important to explore. So many people who might present as anxious, depressed or angry do not define their situation as having a mental health issue, but rather a series of external problems. with others and the outside world. So they already have a lot of guilt and probably sensitive to implied criticism. How do you approach them about this situation? I guess I can speak to that for a little bit, Greg, and then over to you. Yeah. So I guess just keeping in mind mental illness is how it's I guess it's relative depending on cultural context, depending on people's spiritual, religious, and personal understanding. So it's really important when you're engaging with someone not to put your framework onto theirs, but to focus. A tip to kind of neutralize things can be focusing on, their quality of life and their sense of connection, meaning, and just their functioning in the world. And if there's anything that can be done to support them with that. So you can put the labels aside, the diagnosis, and bring it back to, are they experiencing joy? Are they healthy? Are they sleeping okay? And they're things that we can all connect to. It doesn't matter about diagnosis, and that can reduce their defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
Greg, you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Alana. That's actually great. I completely agree with what you're saying, that sometimes we get caught up in sort of pigeonholing people that, that's a legitimate response to stress, that's a mental illness. These things are very, very blurry. So I completely agree. And then the other thing I'd add, I think, to what you're saying, Alana, is that to some extent, as you heard in my presentation, we play a role in our own distress. We all do. So whether I have a diagnosable mental disorder, or I'm suffering from quite severe anxiety, or I'm just not flourishing, it is the case that human beings play a role in their own experience. So it's not as if there's a binary thing that some experience is due to the person and some experience is due to the environment. That's just not really how it is, I don't think. So you can invite people carefully, but Bill, I think you raise a great question. It's not obvious how to do this most effectively, but you can invite people to reflect on their role in their own experience. And what we teach psychologists and counsellors is, if you want to invite someone to think about their role in their own experiences and distress, step one is not to judge them. Step one is to listen to their experience and validate their experience in their own terms, completely and authentically validate their experience in their own terms. And once you've got that and empathized with that and been really clear that, that you do empathize and you can understand how challenging that is, then you may have created a space where you can start to talk to them about their own role in that, the extent to which the way they're thinking may be contributing, the way they're acting may be contributing, the way past habits they've developed may be contributing. You can win that platform if you firstly listen to them on their own terms, which I don't think is inauthentic. In my world, that's exactly what is really going on. That's the world that they've constructed for themselves. Not just constructed, it's an interaction between the real world and their subjective experience. That's what people do. So first I listen to that, and then I might have the right to ask some questions or make some suggestions about things they could do differently that might change things.
And what I took from that, Greg, is listen and be as non-judgmental as you can.
I wish I was as succinct as you are, James.
Well, then this panelist will be over in no time.
Yes, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I might just you've got some incredible questions here. Because I'll be leaving after this panel, if anyone does have any follow-up questions for me, you can contact, or any of us, you can contact the Mental Health Foundation, and they will filter the questions, and we'll make sure that you get follow-up. So just don't want anyone to be left out, because these are really important questions. I guess one that's quite sensitive is how do we speak to children and youth, I guess, about suicide? Who would like to answer that one?
I can perhaps start with this
James?
one.
Harlin? Yeah, go Harlin.
It is obviously something that's quite important, and I would say that just from what I've seen in the last 18 months, there has been a lot more awareness around on suicide and how to ask that question. I think if it is your child that you're talking to, then you would know best in a way that's obviously comfortable to them and to you how to approach that question. When I work with young people, I think it's the best option is always to just be very clear and trying to use those exact words around suicide or self-harm, if that's what you're asking about. It's a very difficult question to ask, and sometimes we can feel, particularly with those that we love or care about, to I guess not make it sound as scary, and we might use other ways to ask it, but I think just being very clear so that the other person knows exactly what you're asking and that is what you're aware of as well. I think the other person feels very comfortable answering if you use the word suicide, because it helps them to go, okay, well, this person understands what this is or what this means, and I can be open with them. And I think perhaps also just looking into some really great resources, if this isn't something that you sort of practice in for parent support or for I guess even from the Are You OK Day website, given we just had that last week, just, you know, being mindful of having a quiet space, what time of day you're asking, so not it's like a rushed conversation, being mindful of maybe who else is listening or what's been happening for that person during that day. If you're starting to notice any changes in them and you think it's the right time to ask them, giving them that dedicated space and time to really be clear with what you want to talk about and offering them support. So I guess making it quite a personal conversation and not very dismissive of whatever they might say.
Thank you. And I'll just add to that, that often when we talk to children about suicide, but also death, we a lot of us don't actually ask them what's their opinions and their beliefs. What do they think life is? What do they think happens when they die? What is how would they like to be looked after if they are experiencing pain as a family, and what would help them? So I think it's a beautiful point of connection to explore meaning with children and take away help them alleviate the fear that we're all in this together, and that these thoughts can come and go, but they are like waves and they often don't last. And if you can reach out to someone in that moment, the ocean can become still, and just taking away the stigma of talking about life and death and suicide. It's really important. Did you want to add anything there, Greg, or good? No, you're the only person I can see on my screen, so we'll just have one more question, which I think is a really important one. Do you have any specific advice for people in their 30s and 40s who are single and live alone and are rarely mentioned on this stage? And I'll also add in another question, you can weave the both, is that how do we, this demoralising feeling of being still in lockdown, even though the rates keep going up, I guess the isolation, and then any tips or strategies around that?
I think it comes back to what Greg was saying earlier about having something to look forward to. We have to adapt to our new normal. I work a lot with people with depression, and there's always that comparison to who I was before, and I'm not performing as I was before. And it's about readjusting, setting that bar to what's appropriate, and going easy on yourself, that bit of self-compassion, self-kindness. For those who are, isolated, single, yes, it is a really tough time. And I would say it comes back to that analogy: look after yourself first, and then you can embrace others into your world when the time comes.
Yeah, great point. And I'd just add just a little reminder. Yes, I completely agree. We're all experiencing. It's frustrating. We can feel angry at people who aren't following the government's instructions, that they're making it worse for us. There's a whole lot of polarization going on in the media. So there's a lot of negatives to focus on. There's no doubt about that. But I just take you back to that idea that to some extent we can choose what we focus on. To some extent, I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm sure all of us, 30-year-olds living alone, all of us have activities and interests and hopes and interests, passions that actually are not impacted by COVID. For example, I've read more books in the last 18 months than I did on average over the previous 10 years. I can now play a decent samba on my drum kit at 110 beats per minute, something that I've wanted to do for about 50 years. And that's because I'm working from home and at lunchtime I practice. I'm not minimizing the reality of the challenges many people are facing, and I know it's easier for some people than others. Some people have more degrees of freedom than others do to make choices. But I have to remind us that to some extent we all have choices, even under the most demanding and oppressive of situations. Those choices might include reaching out for professional help for some people, but there are things we can do to improve our situation, focusing on quality of life. I think Alana mentioned that before. That's just a little thought to leave you with.
And I'll just finish up with one comment to whoever asked that question. I've been working with some men and women who are single in therapy, and it's an incredible time to reflect and take stock of any work that you need to do on yourself, so that when the world does open up, that you are ready and you've got an upgrade in skills, you've worked on conflict in relationships that has been unresolved, so you can use this time for personal growth and development and be more ready when the time comes. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the panelists. It was great to connect with you today. Never enough time. And thanks to everyone who wrote in these questions and had joined us today. I think Ken is going to play some music. Is that correct, Ken?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Roy. Yes, I will be. So thank you all the panelists, Professor Greg, Dr. James, and Harlin, and Dr. Roy for such a thought-provoking and enlightening panel discussion. It is truly eye-opening and inspiring to be able to absorb your wisdom and knowledge while listening to your meaningful conversations. And I'm sure this session will help a lot more audiences on better understanding and improving their mental and psychological well-being. So now I'll quickly play for you my own song that I wrote 8 years ago during my period of isolation and depression. It's called Bows for Life. It is a song that expresses nostalgia for youth and a desperate search for meaning on my lonely path that eventually leads to a more uplifting spirit arriving at the chorus. Through this song, I was able to lift myself out of depression and found some joy and gratitude in a few close, true brothers in my life, as I came to realize that quality is much better than quantity. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you, everyone. And before you go, can we have photo with the panel as well? Thank you. Okay. Now I'd like to thank you and welcome the Department of Health representative, Mohamed and Pasu. Thank you so much for joining. And now we pass over to you. The Department of Health is going to provide a presentation on COVID vaccination and COVID safe behavior. Over to you. Thank you, Mohamed.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for inviting us. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we meet on and pay my respects to the elders, both past, present, and emerging. What I'm going to do is give you an overview of what COVID, we all know what COVID is, but I think sometimes it's good to be reminded what COVID does to us and how we can support each other and how we can also prevent the infection and also prevent the spread of this disease. So most people who get infected will have a very mild to moderate respiratory illness, and normally it lasts about 2 weeks and people will recover. But sometimes people can get severe illness, and one of the most common illnesses that people would end up with is pneumonia. This is the building up of fluid in the lung region as well. And due to this, sometimes people will go into more severe cases, and this is where we refer to them as acute respiratory distress syndrome, where they would need oxygen, so they would need to be taken into hospitals. And if they get worse, then they would be put into the ICU unit and be on a ventilator. And normally when they put people on a ventilator, they would also put them into an induced coma, so they keep them stable and they're able to be provided with the necessary oxygen that is needed for them to breathe as well. One of the problems with this virus is that it can also cause damage to various organs. So this is called sepsis. This happens, and I'll talk more about this, is what we then refer to subsequent to post-COVID times as long COVID. We also carry a lot of microorganisms in our body, and sometimes they could be opportunistic pathogens when we get infected. Now, generally, the virus is spread from your saliva or discharge from when people sneeze, and this is why we strongly recommend people to sort of cover their nose or mouth when they sneeze or cough. And this is why the mask has been made mandatory in Australia and in Victoria especially, that you wear the mask when you go out anywhere or even in an enclosed space. Generally, the incubation period for this virus is about 2 to 14 days. So 2 to 14 days. And this is why it is important, if you have come across a person who is infected, or you have been to a site or hotspot, as they refer to in common language, which is referred to a tier 1 site where an infected person has been, you must test and quarantine for 14 days. Because the virus can take up to 14 days to manifest itself and you see the symptoms. So during this period, when people do not show symptoms, they are still infectious. And this is what we are seeing in the community. This is why we have large numbers these days, because there are lots of people out in the community who should be quarantining as well, but aren't, and they are also thereby spreading the disease to other people. People can be asymptomatic as well. Just to give you some stats, as of yesterday, there's about 223 million cases across the world since the beginning of this pandemic. We have lost about 4.6 million people have died due to this pandemic as well. In Australia, we have not had that bad case numbers, but we are starting to build over the last few months. We have had 71,900 odd cases. Today, as of yesterday, we have about 17,610 cases right across Australia. And we have about 1,084 deaths that have occurred right in Australia as well. Now, as I was mentioning, one of the key problems that people have is called post-COVID syndrome or long COVID. This can attack the virus can attack the body organs such as the lungs, the heart, the nervous system, kidneys, liver, and other organs. In such patients, you won't find the virus anymore. And if you test these patients subsequent to post-COVID period, they will show negative for the virus, but they'll be severely debilitated as well. So some of the complications that we see, and especially we see this after people who have been hospitalized in the ICU. So we see people having cardiovascular problems, inflammation of the heart muscles. They have respiratory problems, and people still find difficult to breathe, especially in young people. Even when they start to do exercises, they'll find they're short of breath and all that. And we also sometimes see in some people the rash, so dermatological aspects as well. And they can also have neurological aspects as well, like the loss of taste and smell. And especially in people who have been in the ICU units and come out after recovery, sometimes they show depression, anxiety, and changes in the mood. So these are some of the post-COVID problems that people are starting to face. And they say roughly it's about 25% of the population who have got COVID will show these symptoms. Now, when we talk about COVID and vaccines alone is not the answer. In order to prevent infection and also to prevent the spread of infection, it is a holistic approach that we take, and we refer to this as COVID-safe behavior. So I've spoken about the mask. Another thing is making sure you wash your hands thoroughly. It is said every human, every 3 minutes, we touch our nose or eyes. And so when we touch surfaces where people have been, who might have been infected, you could inadvertently pick the virus up in your hands and then transmit it yourself. So it's very important that you wash your hands or have hand sanitizers to do that. The other aspect is to QR code. QR code is important. It is, some people might find it really cumbersome, but this is important because this is how people in the health department, especially our contact tracers, are able to trace and support people. If you have been to a tier 1 site and you have QR coded, you will immediately, maybe in a day or two, get a message saying you have been to a hotspot, you have been to a tier 1 site, you are considered to be a primary close contact, you need to test and quarantine for 14 days. So this is important to understand that we need to QR code because we are not only helping ourselves, but we're also helping the community and the health system to be able to contain the disease from spreading. Now, if you've been to a tier 2 site where a person who's been to a tier 1 site but then gone to a tier 2 to another place, that is referred to as a tier 2 site. Those people will test and quarantine until they get their results. So it is important to understand that some of the symptoms shown by COVID is very similar to some symptoms. It's the flu, or even today we are also in the hay fever season. So sometimes a sore throat, a cough, a runny nose, shortness of breath. These are some of the common symptoms. With the flu, you can also have fever, chills as well as with COVID. And COVID also has the loss of smell or taste that could be seen. So if you have any of these symptoms, what we advise is that you get tested. The testing is free. It's free for every single person on Australian soil. So it's not, you don't have to pay for it. You get tested and you quarantine until your results come, or if you're a primary close contact, you then stay the 14-day period. The government is offering some financial aid for people who might be casual workers and who might lose out on the income, that if you were testing and quarantining just until your results came, you can claim $450. You can apply, there's a hardship program that is there in the Centrelink. You can apply, and if you qualify, you'll be given that $450. If you are quarantining for the 14 days, there's also support available. $1,500 is offered to those people. Again, you need to justify and show proof that you have had a loss of income and you're not unable to work during those 14 days since you're quarantining as well. Now, the Australian government made a decision that the vaccination and testing is free to every single person on Australian soil. Be you a citizen, a resident, a visitor, an international student, or even a refugee. You don't have to pay for the testing or for the vaccination. Now, as of yesterday, we had over 22.7 million doses administered. both Pfizer and AstraZeneca. In Victoria, we have surpassed the 5.8 million doses, and very soon I think we'll be beyond the 6 million doses as well. Now, just to give you some stats, worldwide, 53%, in Australia, 53% of the population has had at least one dose, and only about 32% of the population has had a double dose as well. So worldwide, about 5.6 billion doses have been administered. At least 41% of the world population is now vaccinated. There are about 21 different COVID vaccines available across the world. Now, we were to look at the virus itself. This belongs to a family called the coronavirus because of the structure of the crown-like structure on the surface. This also belongs, the COVID virus is also belongs to the same family that we had SARS, and we also had MERS some time ago. Today in Australia, we have two vaccines that have been used. We have the Pfizer or the Comirnaty, the commercial term is Comirnaty. It is an mRNA vaccine. There's a lot of rumors out there. This is something new. This technology is totally new. It is not new. The work has been started way back in 1961, and it has been developed. And the last vaccine, the mRNA vaccine used, was against Ebola. When we had the outbreak of Ebola about a few years ago in Africa, the vaccine was an mRNA vaccine. We then have also the traditional vaccine, which is now referred to as Vaxzevrica. Most of you would have known it as AstraZeneca. Today, the term that is used is Vaxzevrica. That's the international term that has been applied. So this is your traditional vaccine, which is where you use a non-harmful strain of a virus, where you incorporate the genetic material. So both vaccines, what it does is when we get injected with it, it produces the spike proteins. It does not produce the virus. It produces just the spike proteins. And when the spike proteins are produced, your immune system gets activated. The immune system then produces the antibodies which targets the spike proteins. So thereby it is the spike proteins are destroyed. Now the antibodies can remain for some time, but what happens is this information of producing this particular antibodies is kept in your memory cells. And when you do get a COVID infection, immediately that is triggered, and that will then get activated, and they will target the virus cells. Now, something to remember and note is that no vaccine in the world can give you 100% immunity. Most vaccines after the second dose will build up over 90%. And you'll see even the latest data coming out from world research papers, if a vaccine, most vaccines, whether it be these two vaccines or some of the well-known other vaccines, they're all over 90% after the second dose. So it's important that people take both doses. Today in Victoria, both the Pfizer vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine are given 6 weeks apart. In some cases, like with the Pfizer, at the beginning, they were giving it 3 weeks apart, and AstraZeneca was being given 12 weeks apart. Due to the outbreak, and in order to get more people vaccinated, the state government decided that they would give both vaccines 6 weeks apart so that people could get vaccinated and also build up their immunity. We also have two other vaccines. You would have heard in the last few days, the Prime Minister announced about this. The Moderna vaccine, which is referred to as 5X. This is another mRNA vaccine, which works in a similar manner as the Pfizer. This should be available in a few weeks' time for a general public. This will also be given to the same age group as the Pfizer vaccine, from age of 12 up to 59. So, and we also have purchased Novavax, which is another vaccine that should come end of the year or early next year. Now, just to mention, we hear this Delta strain. These days, we hear constantly about the Delta strain. Viruses tend to mutate. Sometimes the change can be small, but sometimes it can be large to cause more pathogenic nature. So what we have today is over 11 different strains of this virus. And they have to manifest in humans because we are the host for this particular virus. And when it undergoes changes in the human and manifests itself, they were initially referred to by the country where it manifested. WHO subsequently renamed them all by the Greek alphabets. And today, out of the 11 that are there. 4 of them are of concern to the WHO, the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta. The Delta strain is the one that is causing a lot of problems right across the world. And the difference between the Delta strain and the original virus last year was that the Delta strain is more contagious, it spreads faster, it's also targeting a lot of young people. Today in Victoria, the minister announced that 85% of the people are under the age of 50, so it's targeting more of the young people. And just the fleeting contact with a person is enough for you to get infected as well. So this is why it's important that we take all the necessary precautions to avoid getting infected. The good news is both vaccines are effective against this particular strain and the other strains that are there as well. As any vaccine, we can have some side effects. This is very common. So pain, tiredness, headaches, aches, and fever are some of the common side effects that we see. The fever is very rare. It's a very low percentage, but the others can be, you can see from 37% to 83% the possibility as well. Now, in most people, in many people, these sort of side effects are seen after the first dose for AstraZeneca and the second dose for Pfizer. It can also change, but this is what the trend is. But for some people, you might have no side effects. So do not be alarmed that if you do not have side effects, that doesn't mean the vaccine is not working. It's just that each person is different. As we get older, our immune system is not, it doesn't get activated as fast as a young person's immune system. So sometimes those changes will be seen. I wanted to touch on one of the key aspects is the anaphylaxis reaction. Now, this is a severe allergic reaction. So what happens is if you do get an anaphylaxis reaction, is you can break out in hives. You can have your throat muscles contracting and causing you distress, and you might find difficult to breathe. So this happens within the first 15 minutes after the vaccination. So this is why when you do go to get vaccinated, either at a GP clinic or you go to a mass vac site, you are asked to remain there for 15 minutes under observation. Even if you go to a drive-in site, you are asked, you should not be driving at all. You should have parked your car, got vaccinated, and remain seated in the car for the 15 minutes period. So if you do have this anaphylaxis reaction, which is very rare, you can be provided with the necessary treatment and support by the medical professionals who are there as well. Now, people talk about this. I think with AstraZeneca, there's been a lot of media information about clots. These clots are referred to as thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, or TTS. So this is again very rare. Although the media has made such an issue of it, this is not common in most people. If you take AstraZeneca, this AstraZeneca has been given in over 187 countries. So what we see today is that you can see the symptoms for this particular adverse effect between the 4th and the 30th day can occur during that period. And we know now that some of the symptoms are severe persistent headache, chest pain, swelling in your legs, finding difficult to breathe. You might have nausea and vomiting as well, abdominal pain, tiny blood spots under the skin from the site of the injection, and also shortness of breath. If you do have any of these side effects, please get to the hospital and they can treat you. Today, we have very good treatment available for people who show these symptoms. Now, just to compare between COVID and the vaccine, you can get clots due to COVID as well. The clots due to COVID is 16.5% times it's possible for you to get clots due to COVID. If you compare that to AstraZeneca, the vaccine, the chances of getting clots is 0.0004%. So you can see, if you weigh the pros and cons of it, it's much better to get vaccinated than getting the clots due to COVID itself. In Australia, we've given over 10.2 million doses have been given. We have had about 80 odd cases of TTS because of the treatment, and now we know how to sort of identify this. We have been able to treat most of these people. We have only lost 8 people. Sadly, we lost 8 people. There were 6 women and 2 men who have died in during this period since the vaccination started way back in February. Now, with Pfizer, there's sometimes a possibility that somebody might develop myocarditis or pericarditis. So myocarditis is the inflammation of the heart muscles, and pericarditis is the inflammation of the thin sac that surrounds the heart. Now, again, this is very rare. This is generally seen, it has been seen in Israel, in UK, and also in USA. This has been seen in young men below the age of 25, people who have got it. So these symptoms are seen in 1 to 5, the first 5 days. It can be chest pain, pressure or discomfort, shortness of breath, irregular heartbeats, pain with breathing, and fainting as well. Again, seek immediate medical attention. Do not allow it to continue. If you have had the vaccination, you have these symptoms, please go to the hospital and they will be able to help you. There's so far no one has died due to this side effect. So we have been able to treat everyone who have got the side effects by some chance. Now, another aspect was pregnancy and vaccination. Pregnant women can routinely be offered Pfizer at any stage of their pregnancy. There's a false statement out there and a rumor that women and men who take this vaccine become sterile or infertile. It is false. There's no scientific evidence to show any proof or medical evidence to show that this is occurring. So women who are trying to become pregnant do not need to delay the vaccination or avoid becoming pregnant after vaccination. It has been found that pregnant women, if they do get COVID, it can be severe, so severe that they could end up in the ICU as well as needing to be on the incubator, and they could also have a stillbirth. They could, and even if the baby is born, the baby would need to be sometimes, if the baby gets infected through the mother, they could need to be in the ICU as well. So getting vaccinated is important. This will not only safeguard the mother, but also safeguard the fetus and the baby as well. So it has also been shown scientifically that the vaccine provides indirect protection to the babies by transferring antibodies to the placenta for pregnant women or breast milk through breastfeeding women as well. As we know, the vaccine is now available for every person over the age of 16 and above are being offered the vaccine. Now we also from today have started vaccinating children 12 and above. So children 12 to 15 are only, 12 to 18 are only given Pfizer vaccine. They are not given AstraZeneca. People over 18 to 59 have the choice of either getting Pfizer or taking AstraZeneca. If you do plan to take AstraZeneca, you would need to sign a consent form. You talk to your doctors and you discuss and make an informed decision. Anyone over 60 is given the AstraZeneca vaccine unless they've had an adverse effect to the first dose or they have certain medical conditions, which is on the website. They would apply to the Victorian Specialist Immunization Service and they could be given the Pfizer vaccine. But at this stage, anyone over 60 is only being offered the AstraZeneca vaccine. So again, we are doing a blitz with year 12 students. We are trying to get them all vaccinated before the exams, VCA exam starts. So year 12 students, their teachers, and also the supervisors are being vaccinated. They have priority bookings. Through the school, they can get a special number. They can make their bookings and get vaccinated. This is being done from the 7th, and the sort of a blitz period is up to the 19th of September. If you don't have a Medicare card, or you can apply for an individual healthcare identifier. This could be done online as well. Lots of international students might be able to get this. Now, the only thing with this is the Medicare card will allow you to go to a GP and get vaccinated. You don't have to pay any money. So others, international students and anyone else who does not have a Medicare card, ideally, it would be best to go to a mass vac site or state-run vaccination site. You don't need to pay anything. You can make your bookings and get vaccinated. Now, you can book at any of these vaccination sites. You can go to the vaccination portal site, portal.cvms.vic.gov.au, or call the 1-800-675-398. Lots of people find it's easier to call this number and make the bookings. You can also then look around at various other places. There's lots of places still that do have vaccines available. As the Premier yesterday announced, there's quite a still, and every week we get more vaccines. So today we have opened up new vaccination hubs as well. We have opened 8 schools, have started vaccinating as well. So please contact or make your bookings, or if you have your Medicare card, it'd be ideal to go to your GPs and also make your bookings. When the Moderna vaccine comes, also the pharmacists would be able to book. You know, you heard the Prime Minister also announce that at the pharmacies, you can have your family vaccinating at the same time as well. People who are unable to leave home due to various reasons, they might have a disability that prevents them from leaving home and traveling outside. You can, through the disability liaison officers, there's a form and there's a link as well provided. You can contact them and you can organize for them to come and give you a vaccination at home. Now, we always ask ourselves, what's the advantage of getting vaccinated? COVID vaccines are effective. They prevent you from spreading the disease. That's the most one, prevent you from spreading a full-blown disease. It also keeps you getting seriously ill. You would need to be hospitalized or in ICU. Today, we find that over nearly 70% of the people who are in hospitals at the moment, even in Victoria, are unvaccinated people. There's not a single person who is fully vaccinated in hospitals. So you can see how effective the vaccination process is. Also, it has been shown scientifically that after 2 doses, it also prevents the long COVID syndrome. COVID vaccines cannot make you sick. As I mentioned, there's no virus present. It's some aspects, the genetic material that is present to create the spike proteins. Scientific evidence has also shown that the virus is prevented from mutating in people who are vaccinated. Now, something to remember, the vaccine, the first dose of the vaccine will take 2 to 3 weeks for you to build up immunity. Your immune system doesn't occur immediately after vaccination. So this is why we are encouraging people to go and get vaccinated. Don't wait until you have an outbreak in your neighborhood or outbreak in your neighbor has got or your family members have got. If you're already infected, the vaccine will not work. The vaccine is not a treatment. It's a preventative measure. It's not going to cause your virus, your infection to get worse or better. If you have had COVID, we recommend you to wait for about 6 months before you get vaccinated. Because when you do recover from COVID, the reason you recover from COVID is your immune system works, subsequently produces the antibodies, it targets, and then you recover after about 11 to 12 days after infection. That is in general, people. Sometimes it can take up to 4 weeks or 8 weeks or even for more time in some people as well. So the reason we ask you to get vaccinated is this particular antibodies you have might only target the virus that you got. Whereas when you get vaccinated, which targets all the various strains that we have been speaking about, the 11 different strains. So the best is to get vaccinated after 5 to 6 months. If you get vaccinated earlier, that is fine, but the best advice we can offer you is to take it after 5 to 6 months. So another thing to be aware of, if you made an appointment to get vaccinated, if you're feeling unwell, if you have fever, cough, runny nose, because you might have made the booking and you never know what could have occurred since then. So if you're feeling any of these symptoms, please do not go to the vaccination site. Please ring them up and remake your bookings. You get tested. If you're waiting for COVID results, you don't go to the vaccination site. If you're tested positive or you are in isolation, you're referred to as a primary close contact. You must finish your 14 days of isolation before you can apply and get vaccinated. If you are totally fit, you have no problems, you have no symptoms, you don't need to get tested before going for vaccination. You can make your booking and happily go and get vaccinated as well. So again, to end, over 5.7 billion doses have been given. The vaccines are safe. There's very rare issues, as I mentioned. Please talk to your GPs if you have any underlying medical conditions, because they know your conditions best. When you go to get vaccinated, they might not know what you have. So talk to your GPs, make the informed decision, and then get your vaccination. Please look for authentic websites for information. Google is not the ideal place. You must find authentic, like go to the Department of Health in Victoria or the federal government or the WHO site or CDC to get proper information as well. these are some of the links. We'll share this with you. And thank you very much. The Premier said we will want 1 million people vaccinated in 5 weeks. We are on the track. We are somewhere around 90 odd percent as of yesterday. So we should be getting our 1 million doses done very soon. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mohamed, for a very informative and useful presentation on COVID. And would you like me to help with reading the questions?
Yes, please.
Yes.
That might be
so
easy.
I think there's one question from Zina. What about the reports of the spike protein and blood clots passing to the child through breast milk?
So where we have seen the blood clots is in AstraZeneca. Pregnant women are being offered Pfizer. The vaccine that is of choice is Pfizer. Again, as I said, the blood clots are very rare. So if it occurs, so this is why to take the safety precaution that ATAGI and the government has adopted, that pregnant women will only be given Pfizer, not AstraZeneca.
And there's another question: Is parental consent required for school children from the school?
Yes, certainly they will require, and this is why we are asking the parents to please get their children vaccinated. So they would have to get parent consent. I think the consent form will have to be signed by the parents. No one is going to force a vaccine on children without your permission.
And there's another question from Flora. She said, I did my vaccine, but I need the certificate for my work. Where I can get it? I don't have Medicare. GP can't give it to me.
You can go to MyGov. The MyGov, you can create a MyGov account and you can get the it can be downloaded from MyGov. Yeah.
And there's another question from the Q&A. What about the MU strain, the MU strain?
Yes, we have heard that the MU strain is started. In Los Angeles, there are about 300 cases of MU strain. It's been closely monitored at the moment. So we are, so far we have not had a single MU strain in Australia at this stage. Yeah.
And one from the anonymous attendee. Thanks, Mohamed, for the great information on many of the vaccine-hesitant social media conversations. Many people form in the so-called wellness community, such as my daughter and all her friends, are all waiting for the Novavax vaccine to get here before they get vaccinated. So can we accelerate its arrival to get these people vaccinated sooner?
The Novavax is still to be approved by ATAGI, which is the key body of medical experts in Australia. They are an independent body of even the federal government. They have key experts. They are the ones who approve all treatments, whether it be our drugs or whether it be vaccinations or even like treatments for cancer. Or they're the ones who approved. Novavax has still not been approved at this stage. We are not going to see Novavax until maybe late December, early next year. We have 3 fantastic vaccines by end of this month. We have the AstraZeneca, we have the Pfizer and the Moderna. My request to you is get vaccinated. Don't wait until you Novavax. We are having a surge at the moment. We're having an outbreak at the moment. We want to protect people. Please get vaccinated. Yeah.
And now there's a question from Valentina. What if the person doesn't have internet and cannot use apps?
What do you mean, to make a booking?
Yeah.
So they could use the phone. They could ring. I gave you the 1-800 number. They could ring up and make the appointment. Yeah. And if they need interpreter services, they just press 0, and that will help them which language they want interpreter services as well. And so in some places, there are places that are offering walk-ins, so they can go to check the sites that offer you walk-ins, and they can go to that site and get vaccinated.
And Valentina just added, no, actually she meant to get certificate, sorry. So what about
so
to get...
you can write to the AIR, Australian Immunization Register. You can apply for your certificate. You have to still go through some process, and you might have to get some support, some help from somebody, because they will have to send it by mail or by electronic means. So I would strongly advise you to get some support from some of the community representatives and get that organized for you.
And I see a question from Edwin. Is TGA going to approve the Chinese vaccine which claim 100% effective to Delta?
I do not know whether TGA will approve or not. At this moment, TGA is at the moment in the process of approving Novavax. We are still waiting for the approval. So we have 3 vaccines that the federal government has bought. It's if you go to the WHO site, there are so many vaccines that have been approved. So that if people have taken those vaccines, they'll be considered to have taken an equivalent vaccine to what we have in Australia. There's no decision to approve by TGA for the Chinese vaccine at this stage.
Thank you, Mohamed. And I see a question from Therese. Is it safe to take the second Pfizer vaccine after 3 weeks of taking the first dose?
Yes, initially the second dose was given after 3 weeks. The reason that in Victoria we delayed, and most places they delayed the second dose to 6 weeks, because we were short of supply. We all know, you heard in the media, you heard the Premier talk about it, you heard the Prime Minister talk about it. So what we were trying to do is, because we are in an outbreak situation, when we were not in an outbreak situation, we had the luxury of getting people vaccinated, second dose, and then following on. But today we are in outbreak. We are trying to get people at least have the first dose so they can build up that immunity, because as I said, immunity takes approximately 2 to 3 weeks to start. So we want to get the first vaccine in, and by the 6th week, we can give them the second vaccine.
Thank you, Mohamed. And one from Bianca. What sort of information is available about the new strain of COVID in America?
You can get it from the CDC, and also if you go to the TAGI website, they do give all the update, and even the TGA website, they keep updating information as the new strains come, as the information comes, and we get the scientific information. They're all updated on the federal government website, health department website.
And I see one from Tina. My father had his first vaccine at a GP, then second at a vaccination hub. The hub could not see that my father had his first vaccine on their system. Will the 2 systems be connected? Will both vaccines be recorded on MyGov?
Yeah, so when a person goes and get vaccinated, whether it be the first dose or second dose, it is supposed to have the GP should have uploaded the information onto the Australian Immunization Register. That's where all our vaccination is sitting. And if the GP has not done that, I think that maybe your father needs to go to the GP and sort that out, because that's important, because after the second dose, then only you will get your certificate. So they will have to cross-check and make sure that that information is updated as well. So it sits in the Australian Immunization Register.
Yes, and one from Kosit. Is this drug experimental, as stated in Parliament documentation?
It's not an experiment. It's not a drug. It's a vaccine. There's a difference between a drug and a vaccine. This is a vaccine because this is what a vaccine does, is gets your immune system activated. So these vaccines have been trialed and tested, and they've had lots of scientific support. The world came together. Unlike the previous vaccines, the world came together with regard to the COVID vaccines. The world put billions of dollars together. This is why we were able to get it out very fast, very soon. They did not take any shortcuts. They are effective, and lots of countries are using. As I said, AstraZeneca is in over 80-odd countries. Pfizer is over 70-odd countries. And we know Moderna is also being given in so many countries at the moment.
Thank you, Mohamed. And Sina asked, what does Pfizer information say about male fertility?
Again, this is there is no link to fertility with the vaccines. this is false information spread by people who are anti-vaxxers. There's no scientific evidence or medical evidence to talk about male fertility or female fertility.
And one from Stephen. I realized the government has moved to 6 weeks between doses for both vaccines. What does the research show to be the optimum spacing?
Okay, so with AstraZeneca, if you remember when AstraZeneca was introduced in UK, it came from Oxford University. That's where the research was done. Initially, they were giving it in 4 weeks. The dosage between first and second was 4 weeks. As they saw that the immunity is building up over a period of time. So delaying the second dose, because it's the first dose that starts your immunity process. So it can, over a 6-week period, build up to a high level. And then when you get your second dose, it'll build up to 90% as well. So again, what scientific evidence is showing that it could be given in 12 weeks, but because we are in an outbreak, this is the key thing to understand. We are in an outbreak. People need to have their second dose to have that high level of vaccine given to them, so that they could subsequently build up that high level of immunity. The first dose will give you a maximum immunity about 70-odd%. The second dose will build up your 90-odd%. This is why in Victoria, the AstraZeneca vaccine can be given from 4 to 8 to 12 weeks as well, even 16 weeks. But we have brought it down to 6 weeks because to build up people's immunity as much as possible. Because as I mentioned, it's a second dose that will give you over the 90-odd% that we want people to have.
Thank you, Mohamed. And from anonymous attendee, any news about booster facts for those who are double closed at present, double dosed?
A good question. Now in UK, Israel, as well as in USA, they're starting and planning to give the booster shot, a third shot, because they've realized that it's about 9 to 10 months where the person's immunity lasts as well. So this would build up the immunity to back its normal level of over 90%. So it's already been done in certain countries because like those countries are going into winter. We know during winter is a time that the virus is more active because enclosed environments and all that. In Australia, the Targi has still not started on a booster shot. Remember, we only started vaccinating on 23rd of February. We are still in our infancy stage. Earlier months, we had hardly many people take up the vaccine. It's only the last few months that there's been such a increase in people taking up the vaccine as well. So we need to get people vaccinated first. We need people get their second shot. It might be like the flu vaccine that we might need to take like another shot somewhere middle of next year or early next year. So this is still being worked out. But at the moment, we are trying to get people vaccinated with their second dose, first and second dose. Yeah.
Thanks, Mohamed. And Tina asked, can we please have a phone number for Australian Immunisation Register?
It will be on the website. If you type Australian Immunisation Register, I don't have the number with me offhand, but if you type in Australian Immunisation Register, you'll have to log in. And I think you might have to do online. You might not be able to ring them up. I don't think they're going to respond to calls. It might be you have to type in or send an email to their site. So if you go into the Australian Immunisation Register site, you might see all that information.
And we have a new question from Q&A. Are we earning a certificate of attendance for this webinar?
That's not my decision. I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I don't think we are having a certificate, but I'll contact Mental Health Foundation and I'll see what will be provided afterwards. And I have a pre-selected question as well. So how do we find out the long-term side effects of vaccines if we are still considered quite an early stages of our rollout?
So if you look at the vaccines, they're being given since last October, November. That's the time the vaccines have been given. We are now coming to a year or so of these vaccines. Lots of studies have been done and lots of effects have been seen. We really cannot say 100% there are no long-term side effects. That's impossible to say at this stage. But we need the vaccine now. We need to protect people. This is important to consider the protection of everyone. And this is why vaccines are being rolled out at the moment.
Thank you. And Annie asks, is Moderna more suitable for kids than Pfizer?
Both vaccines are effective at this stage. They are like the dosages are the same. So they're both effective. There's nothing to show that Moderna is better than Pfizer at this stage. They're both mRNA vaccines.
And Carol just asked, a client of mine has long COVID and collapses several times a day. Has he heard of this before?
Yeah, long COVID, I just mentioned long COVID, people will find difficult to breathe, people will faint. This is the post-COVID period. And we are seeing that in quite a few young people as well. Even with SARS, initially they never thought that SARS had long SARS effect as well. They're subsequently finding that there is scarring of the lung tissues. And even with this particular one, this can cause damage, I said, not only to your lungs, to your heart and various other organs as well. So long COVID is possible. And we are seeing that in people as well, in Australia as well.
And where can this client get help?
They're doctors. The doctors is the only one who can help them and treat them. And they might need to go to hospital, they might need treatment, you know. So.
And Valentina asked, what is the percentage of people with long COVID?
We still are seeing it starting because remember, it's only been nearly 2 years. So they're seeing, roughly they say CDC had some percentage, around 25% of people who have been in ICU developing long COVID. Most people who have developed long COVID are people in ICU, who have been in ICU.
And is there any more questions? And Cynthia just asked, there was talk about mixing vaccines. Example, if one had AstraZeneca first and Pfizer to improve immunity. Is there any science in this theory?
There are some papers to show that mixed vaccines can be more effective, but there's no real hardcore evidence to support. I know in Canada, they're doing that. In some parts of USA, they've been doing that. But in Australia, ATAGI still maintains that vaccines will be the same vaccine for both doses. So when ATAGI changes, the only time they've made that exception is for people who have had adverse effect to change the vaccines. Other than that, they maintain that the best effect is to have both doses of the same vaccine.
And Sina just asked, are other vaccines being made to target the new COVID mutations?
Yes, certainly. As we move forward, the companies that are even like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Moderna, they will be targeting. It's like the flu vaccine. Every year, when we get the flu vaccine, it's targeting the newer strains that have come. So similarly, they will tweak the vaccines. They have got the vaccines now, which is fantastic. It's a matter of tweaking it so that it can be more, it can target those new strains as well. It will happen. This is why my strong gut feeling is that we might be taking these vaccines every year, like the flu vaccine we take.
Thanks. And Carol asked, is there a patch coming for vaccinations? Patch.
No, at this stage, there's no patches. It's all injections. Yeah.
And Edwin asked, are there any intention to give the third injection later on?
That's what I mentioned about possible that we would do that. I think I've responded to that question. Yeah.
And if there's no more question, we're going to wrap up the session.
thank you very much. I got to jump off to another meeting.
Oh, thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you, no
in
problem.
such a
Thank you very much.
hurry.
It's been a pleasure being part of this event.
Thank you
for
so
joining.
much, Mohamed. That was one of the most informative sessions that I've actually dialed into. So very informative and very valuable. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Has. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
I'd
you,
just like
Mohamed. Thank you.
to wrap up, thanks everyone for attending, and my sincere thanks to our Mental Health Foundation Australia, Mr. Fasan, Mr. Huss, Preeti, Nifia, and the whole team for the huge contribution behind the scenes that allows today's event to happen. And thank you to all our expert panelists, Professor Greg, Dr. Alana, Dr. James, and Harlin, for delivering this very insightful and much needed mental health panel discussion to our communities in need. I also express my deep thanks to Mohamed and Pasu from Department of Health for your relentless effort in bringing the most up-to-date vaccine information to help keep our community safe and informed. A big thanks also to Mr. Mohit Gupta and Swinburne University for the continuous support for our initiatives. And we are grateful also for the support from the VNC. On behalf of CCOEI, I acknowledge the commitment and selfless collaboration of our external group partners, consisting of numerous local councils, including Manningham, Whitehorse, Borondawa, Monash, Knox, Owunda councils, Migrant Information Centre, Services Australia, and many community leaders who are offering enormous support to CCOEI as a working group for our project. I would like to acknowledge everyone in CCOEI for your support: Soiting, Bray, Sam, Cynthia, Con, Diones, Danielle, Dan, Krishani, Sarah, Emma, Tony, Gina, and everyone in the committee of management team and all volunteers who have contributed to making this workshop happen. And I hope to see you all very soon in the next CCOEI event, and stay safe and open.
And lastly, can I also thank you, Ken, for the fantastic job that you've done today as the MC, as our moderator, and also thank you so much for your beautiful music today. So well done, and we certainly look forward to seeing you, I guess, MC these events more in the future. Thank you so much for the fantastic today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Would you play another short music before we end?
Well said, Sue.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I support that.
Oh, thank you, Huss.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, just play a very short, maybe 2 minutes or whatever. We all appreciate it. Yes.
Sure, if you insist.
Yes, yes, encore. Yes.
Thank you once again, Ken. And
thank you so much, Ken.
Everybody.
Thank you. So thank you so much for the session, and I'll see you soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.